Games Workshop have released their list of the top 10 books of last year, and fortunately, these are all ones that I've read. I don't think I finished every novel from last year. I think the Minsker book I haven't read, and maybe another one, but thankfully these ones I've actually all read. So we can go through the top 10 books of last year as voted by Games Workshop's adoring public, and it's an interesting list. So we're going to go through the list, we're going to go through the plot of each book, and we're going to talk about, I guess, like my thoughts on the list. It's an interesting one. So number one, in first place, we have The Drop Site Massacre by John French. If you are not familiar with this book, I talked about it a little bit in the Corvus Corax stream a couple of months ago, where I did speak about his story in particular. But Corvus Corax's journey is a really interesting one in The Drop Site Massacre, and like with the other Loyalist Primarchs, we get kind of a different angle on them of what happened on that fateful day when the Loyalists walked into perhaps the worst trap that has ever been set in the history of the setting. After Horus Lupercal's betrayal was revealed, of course, the Emperor of Mankind decided to bring him to heel, and 7 full legions were sent to bring him and those who had joined him, Fulgrim, Angron, who's the other one, Mortarion, to justice. And so the Emperor sent 7 legions. And these 7 legions arrived in 2 waves. The first wave was Ferrus Manus, Corvus Corax, and Vulcan. And they really wanted to get stuck in. And despite Corvus Corax kind of suggesting that maybe they show restraint, Ferrus Manus is not having it. He kind of just charges straight in. And this book gives us an insight into how that disaster unfolded, because when the second wave arrived, the Iron Warriors, the Night Lords, the Word Bearers, and the Alpha Legion, the Loyalists thought, oh my god, thank God, they've been fighting. They'd already been fighting like a pretty hellish fight. I mean, Horus had, of course, the ultimate strategist, had played a bit of a blinder, and they'd been fighting in these like boxes, in tunnels. It had been a really tough fight for the Loyalists. And then when their reinforcements arrive, it is revealed that actually they are also sworn to Horus, and pretty brutally they turn on the Loyalists. So it is absolutely savage, and we get to see the salamanders being nuked, and we don't get it in this book, but this is the fight where Ferrus Manus is ultimately killed, and Corvus Corax's legion as well is all but decimated. By the end of the battle, I think there's about 2,000 Raven Guard left, something like that, if I remember correctly. So it's a bit of a shit show, to be honest with you, this book. And far be it from me to compliment the French as an Englishman, but John French is the exception to that rule. And I think he kind of crushed this book. I think this book was very good. I was very weird about this book, and I wasn't that excited for it for 2 reasons. A, this book was released to be a book that accompanied the edition of Warhammer the Horus Heresy. So when Games Workshop release a new edition, they often release a novel alongside it. In fact, I think they pretty much always do nowadays. And this book is that. This book is pretty much made to sell models. That's what it was created for. And in addition to that, this book is covering an event that is covered at quite some length. So we visit the Drop Site Massacre from different angles in multiple books. Vulcan Lives, First Heretic, of course, Fulgrim, and like the fact that we were going back to Istvan 5, I felt a bit weird about it. And to be fair, it was weird. It is a very weird book to read. I don't know how you guys who are maybe a bit newer to Warhammer 40k, but maybe read this book because it was sold as a beginner's novel, felt, but I couldn't help but wonder what it must have been like for that experience, because of course this book misses the key sequences of Istvan 5. It misses, of course, Corvus Corax's fight against Lorgar. It misses the Ferrus Manus's point of Fulgrim's point of view when Ferrus is killed. It's a really weird novel in that respect. And even though we got all these kind of cool little insights, we find out about how the Alpha Legion are actually working pretty hard to make sure that some of the Loyalists do survive. We get to see kind of the beginning of the fracturing within the traitor force, as Angron, of course, is a complete menace to deal with. And but even though we get to see all these kind of cool things, I couldn't help but wonder, what is this book like for newcomers? Because you're getting this really weird viewpoint of the Drop Site Massacre if you haven't read or at least are aware of the rest of the Horus Heresy. So I was kind of surprised to see this book become number 1. I don't know how you guys felt about that, but I thought it was a little bit weird. I don't know. Let me know, chat, what you guys thought if you read it, if you were a big fan of this one. But I found it a little bit strange that this was number one. I do think part of it, to be fair, and if we scroll up, you'll see that the other two Horus Heresy books on this list are Era of Ruin and Ashes of the Imperium, or Horus Heresy era books, I should say, now that we're into the scouring. And I imagine that these two kind of have split the vote. That's my guess, that one of these would have been number one if there wasn't two of them, because of course, there's no tactical voting when it comes to this idea. So half of the Horus Heresy fan base, well, a third would have voted for Era of Ruin, a third voted for Ashes of the Imperium, and a third for Dropsite Massacre. But my suspicion is one of these two would have come out in top if there hadn't been both of them last year. But maybe I'm wrong about that, to be fair. But like personally, I wouldn't have put. I would say I think this is some of John French's best writing. I think he writes the three Primarchs, the three Loyalist Primarchs in particular, very, very well. Even characters like Abaddon, Khan, Ingo Peck, he doesn't write them as kind of caricatures of what people think they are. And I think that is, where 40k writers kind of do their best work, is that we actually get kind of compelling narratives of Space Marines, because so often we read kind of, wolfy wolf, space wolves, stuck up, stubborn Emperor's Children, and we all kind of get a bit bored of it. But at the same time, I think he wrote these really well, and I was a big fan. So, definitely a good book. But I was a little bit shocked, I guess, is what I'm saying, to see this at number one. But I think certainly, a testament to John French's strong writing there. I want more Horus Heresy books. I mean, that is the great news. I guess that's something, you make a really good point there, brother, because one thing we should definitely mention when we have a look at this list is this list does tell us most likely what sold well, and therefore most likely what Games Workshop are going to push more in the future. So if Horus Heresy books are still selling very, very well, which they are, then that tells Games Workshop that, you know what, revisit those events. Maybe we need to go back to Beta Garmin. Maybe we need to go, back to the ascension of each individual demon Primarch. Maybe there are these kind of things that could do with more attention. And the Horus Heresy is, of course, a clusterfuck as a writing exercise, because they didn't plan for it to be as long as it was, and they didn't plan certain story arcs to last as long as they did, and so everything's a bit kind of crazy at times and gets a bit weird. And so adding this kind of book in, like, I think it does add something to the heresy in its sum total, because whereas, for example, it doesn't necessarily tell us new information. Like, most of us would have already assumed that working with Angron was a nightmare in the early heresy. The Alpha Legion, we already knew, were working to save the Emperor and the Imperium in some ways, and they were still serving the Emperor in their own kind of messed up way. Having more concrete examples of them doing that is pretty valuable to, like, the community and the lore, as it were. So I think that this is pretty cool, and so in that respect, I think this is kind of a good thing. I guess it's just, I find it weird not having the climactic battles in the novel that is named the Drop Site Massacre. And I think that I would have put, like, Ferrus Manus's death in, maybe from Ferrus Manus's point of view, or I would have put in Corvus's fight against Lorgar, maybe from, like, Conrad Kurz's point of view, or something like that, just to kind of round the book off, because it is sort of weird to miss the key sequences of the characters in this battle whilst this is a book about that battle. I hope that makes sense. But Flanderization is the process through which a fictional character's essential traits are oversimplified, exaggerated to the point where they constitute their entire personality over the course of a serial work. Interesting. There we go. And that's a Flanderization based out of The Simpsons, is it? There we go. Was Infinite and Divine 2025? No, Infinite and Divine was oh god, that's going to be 2021. 2021, I think. Someone Google it. That was a little while ago. Anyway, up next, not Lilith Hesperax, the other recent Eldar novel by Mike Brooks. We've got Void Scarred, and I actually did do a review of this novel for members on the channel, and this book came second. I guess it's a big win for the gay space elf pirate fans out there, fellas, love your work, fantastic stuff. And yeah, it's pretty interesting to see this book at number 2. Firstly, it's an Eldar book. It's an Eldar book at number 2. Again, above Ashes of the Imperium, which I suspect is a bit of a blip. It's more about a splitting of the vote there. But that's pretty notable and is a good news for you Eldar fans. It tells Games Workshop that Eldar books are popular. People really like them. And like I said, I did go through this for members on the channel. But if you're not familiar with the story, it covers the Star Splinter's fleet and in particular the kind of rise of the Corsairs. And in particular, Prince Mirren Stormdawn. I forgot his name for a second there. In particular, Prince Mirren Stormdawn, who is kind of the he's kind of the usurping character within the book. I guess he becomes the king by the end of the book, and it's a really interesting book because you get to see a new kind of perspective on the Eldar, in my opinion. Because I typically kind of think of like the true kin, the true Eldar as things like the Drukhari, because we think of the Drukhari as having kind of the old level technology of the Eldar, and they're kind of interested in decadence and decay. And the Corsairs provide a really different perspective to that idea, because Stormdawn goes into quite some extent in the book about how really the Drukhari are not the true Eldar. Really, they are just all slaves, and they go into quite some depth on how basically all of the Drukhari are controlled by Asdrubial Vect, to the degree that even who they can breed with is determined by Asdrubial Vect. And that's like a massive deal, because that's why the Drukhari today don't have like psychic powers, etc. And in terms of like setting up little things for the future, there are things about how, oh, maybe Drukhari can get their psychic powers back if they kind of leave and follow a different path, as it were. There's a lot of stuff on the paths. We get quite a good bit on how the Craftworld Eldar are still bastards, which of course, you know, Mike Brooks knows what we all want. We know that he, you know, we know that even in an Eldar book, the Eldar have to be the bad guys, basically. But it's it's pretty good. And in the novel, he is kind of infiltrated by Taynar, who was from the same craft world as Stormdawn had been before, and Taynar had got left to go and infiltrate the Star Splinter's fleet because the Eldar Farseer had been basically trying to orchestrate the destruction of the Corsairs in an attempt to save his own craft world. And so their craft world Ilmarin. And so yeah, he basically starts off as it's a classic love story. He starts off as the person infiltrating the Corsairs, but over time he kind of falls in love with the prince, and the rest is history. The other bad guys in the book are the Orcs. I spoke about them a little bit before. The Orcs are a lot of fun in the novel. There's a massive planet called the Daka planet, and there's a big kind of a volcano cannon called the Guncano, which is pretty awesome for Orc lore as Orcs go. And basically, yeah, they're out there trying to like hunt down all the Eldar as much as possible, because they think that the Eldar make the best slaves in the galaxy, which, I mean, fair enough. But it's really interesting. Mike Brooks has a lot of fun when he's writing, not only with the Orcs, but you have things like the Corsairs base at the start is like inside of a planet, and you get all this kind of cool lore and technology used in the book, which is pretty epic. So I really like this. I think that the big takeaway for me in this book is going to be that Games Workshop, you know, just give Mike Brooks Asdrubial Vect. Just give him to Mike Brooks, and let's just see how crazy shit gets. If you're not familiar, not only is Asdrubial Vect talked about in this novel, he allegedly appears in Mike Brooks' other novel, Lelith Hesperax, and in that book, we get to see an Asdrubial Vect who's a little bit more worried about things and a little bit more concerned, because, of course, Lelith Hesperax had previously joined the Inari, and he doesn't like that. He wants to control all of Commorragh, and Lelith Hesperax is a pretty big deal, so her not following his ways is a potential for rebellion in the future, etc. And so it's more about their kind of conflict within Commorragh. And Asdrubial Vect is one of those characters in 40k that was like how the Silent King used to be. Asdrubial Vect is, in theory, one of the most powerful characters in the entire setting, and he's definitely a big character in the setting. Like, he's mentioned in codexes a lot, he's mentioned in books quite a lot, he occasionally appears in a novel a little bit, but we still actually don't know too much about him. We don't get like POV of this character. We don't really know what his long-term goals are, outside of just continuing on as he's going. And so I think that bringing Asdrubal Vecht more into the spotlight would do a huge amount for Eldar lore. And given the success of Mike Brooks's other Eldar novel, that's was all his Xenos novels really, because Brutal Cunning was also incredibly popular. What's the other one? What's after Brutal Cunning? Not War Boss. The other one. Oh god, I'm a complete mind blank here. The Big Dacker, of course, the Big Dacker. Yes. So yes, so Mike Brooks is pretty much the kind of go-to, I guess, Xenos writer right now, outside of things like the Tau. But yeah, I think that if I was Games Workshop, I would just give Mike Brooks Asdrubal Vecht. So we'll see how that goes. But given the success of his books, and like I say, I think seeing an Eldar book this high up this list is pretty compelling. So I hope that this actually means something for the future of the setting. Pogue, hey buddy, hope you had a good Christmas. Do you think there's a chance the Dark Angels look at the Lion's new attitude, deem him heretical, and we end up with a Dark Angel civil war? I don't know if they'll go full civil war. I don't think I would foresee that, because it's just sort of, I guess it's just been done to death. Dark Angel civil war. Do you know what I mean? I think that if they give us a Dark Angel civil war, like an Ultramarine civil war would be interesting and compelling. A Dark Angel civil war would just be a bunch of people going, oh, this again, right? We're going back to this GW. So it's not that it couldn't happen, but I just doubt they would make that decision. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But I think it's more likely they kind of all fall into line, because he is the Primarch and they are a complete mess. War of Secrets is a good example of how far the First Legion has drifted from the noble origins of M41. This sets up the Lion's return and the friction between the old guard and the Lion's new direction. Yeah, that book is definitely a good example of the... I mean, they're not even being dicks in any kind of pragmatic sense in terms of helping them hunt down the Fallen. They're just being weird about it, and it's a bit weird. And even the lore about Azrael, considering actually going to war against Guilliman momentarily, but he does consider it, is a bit, even for the Dark Angels, you're like, that's just a terrible idea. you will never win that fight. Love you, Dark Angels, you know what I do, but that's just not gonna happen. But yes, anyway, I really hope this that his Lilith novel is setting up a Malice-centered novel where they finally make a move to oust Vecht. Yeah, a Malice-centered novel would be cool. Lady Malice just got a new model in the game, and she is supposed to be like kind of the number 2 Archon. So after Vecht, there is her. So seeing a genuine competitor for Vecht will be interesting for the future of the setting. Do you think that Alpha Primus is made of undiluted Primarch gene stock mentioned in Korax's heresy novel using Custodi's method and Cool's DNA, hence why he is in pain, as Cool isn't a perpetual? I think that it's like a part of his creation has to have been being spliced up, a bunch of like literal bodies being spliced together. It is very much kind of a Frankenstein's monster type situation. He of course hates his creator, and when you look at his face, apparently it looks like it's just a bunch of different body parts that's kind of like sewn together. So that's the vibe he's going for. So in that respect, my guess would be something like he kind of was able to create a series of maybe like Primarch type bodies, or at least a bunch of space marines with additional powers, but of course none of them worked on their own, and so he sewed together all the bits that did work, and thus he created Alpha Primus. But that is a complete guess. The truth is they're very much keeping it in the mystery. I did talk through the new short story that came out last month, and in that story, like, they kind of go the other way, whereas in the previous Alpha Primus lore, they were talking quite heavily about this idea that he's a chimeric space marine. He's descended from all of the Primarchs, and he sees all 20 Primarchs in the mirror, really, when he looks into it. But in that book, the demon says, actually, you're descended from no Primarch, and so it's it's a bit of a 180 there. But the demon is is likely lying. And to be fair, Guy Haley does say in the book, he's like, just so you know, demons do lie. Like, they do lie. That's their thing. So be careful. Yeah. It's sort of up to you. I think I prefer the chimeric gene seed lore. I think it's much more interesting. And having just like another failed Primarch, he also isn't like, he doesn't seem to be a Primarch from my point of view. But the truth is, it's kept deliberately mysterious. Maybe I'll do another Alpha Primus video at some point, but the last one the main Alpha Primus video I did always did very well, so we'll see. Is there a chance we could get a book dedicated to Xanthus? You know what, I'll talk about Xanthus in a little bit, so stay tuned for that one. Up next, we've got Interceptor City by Dan Abnett. Pretty delighted again to see this one so high up on the list of books from last year. If you are not familiar, I mean, this book is, to be honest, it might be a sign of Dan Abnett spending too much time with Hollywood, because in this, this is a novel that is a sequel to a 20-year-old story, as Hollywood writers tend to do nowadays. And we've got Bree Jagdia, she is back. This is all about the Aeronautica, which is, again, it's one of those parts of 40k, kind of like the Eldar, where people have always liked it, they've always been interested in it, but it doesn't really get the attention it deserves. I mean, to be fair, not only is this book a sequel to a 20-year-old novel, that's also a spin-off to Gaunt's Ghost. So this is a real kind of, this is a spin-off from Dan Abnett's, one of his main series, and then this is a sequel 20 years later. So this is kind of a crazy book to get last year, but yeah, it was actually pretty good. So this book, it's got very much the vibe of, at this point in time, Bree is, she's much older, and she is no longer the dogfighter that she once was, and she's actually now kind of like just doing supply runs, and she doesn't really feel bad about that. She's not really salty about it, because being a pilot is incredibly hard on you in the novel. It makes it very clear. So there's this thing called the shredding, which is basically all of the stress, all of the pressure, and the brutal reality of being a pilot in the 41st millennium. And so the shredding has made it such that so many people kind of don't last as pilots in the future. There's even one character in the book who kills themselves because they've sent cadets off to die, and it's a pretty grim, dark book, really. So again, in terms of signs of things to come, the fact that so many people like this book is, again, a really good sign that people are still liking this kind of grim, dark writing, the kind of nitty gritty of what it's like to live and work in the 41st millennium. So it is pretty cool. Oh, why can't I zoom in on that? It's pretty cool to see that this book has done so well. So pretty happy to see it. Good twist towards the end of the novel as well, where it's revealed that there's basically this one of the fighter pilots is basically a traitor and has been using the opportunity to hunt down their comrades. And so it's a pretty great book, and it sets up a bunch of kind of spin-offs. They talk about all these kind of like random little details in the book that don't really go anywhere. So I think Dan Abnett has got more planned around Bree, or at least kind of the Aeronautica. So we'll see how that goes in the future. But pretty great book. I think if you're looking, this is definitely that book I would recommend to people if you're a big fan of 40k, but maybe you're a little bit burnt out, maybe looking for something a little bit different. I'd totally recommend this. This is just good 40k fun. Like, you'll just have a great time. I really enjoyed this. Kind of like any similar ways to like Orc books or something like that. It's what people all know and love. And then 4 to 10. So Archmagos, Ashes of the Imperium, Era of Ruin, Fulgrim the Perfect Son, Grotsnik the Mad Dog, The Remnant Blade, and Tomb World. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 4 to 8 I've done videos on. 9 and 10 I don't think I've really talked about much on the channel. In terms of how these all lie, I've already spoken about Ashes of the Imperium and Era of Ruin. It's a little bit odd to me that these ones are so far down, but like I say, I don't want to repeat myself, but yeah, like I said, I think these kind of split the vote, and so one of these should be higher. But in terms of the rest of them, Fulgrim the Perfect Son, I think is this high only because it is a Primarch novel. If it wasn't a Primarch novel, I don't think it would be that high. I think if anything, because it's a Primarch novel, like the Lions book was the top book when he came out in a year where we had some like legendary Horus Heresy books. So it was seeing this as number 7. I don't think this book really did a lot for Fulgrim. I don't think it did a lot for him at all. And Quipster and I were talking before this book came out, and we were really excited for it. And we were talking about which Emperor's Children characters might appear in this novel. And they even said in the preview, like, oh yeah, a legendary ancient East Emperor's Children hero is going to return or something like that. And then yeah, it's just a new character. It's just a new character. And yeah, he's the new champion of the Emperor's Children, which is all exciting. Fulgrim has declared his intention to be the new Emperor of Mankind at some point in the future, which is exciting, but has the real ring of a plot line that goes nowhere. So it just sort of, yeah, it didn't really do a lot for me, this book. I didn't like hate it or anything like that. It was just, I kind of wanted more for Fulgrim. I think of all of the Demon Primarchs that have returned, Fulgrim, like, I think that they should be doing something quite meaningful with it. And I guess in a way, declaring himself to be the next emperor is too grand of a plan. It's just sort of meaningless in its grand scheming. Do you know what I mean? But yes, Intercept City was my number one this year. Oh, good. I don't actually know what my number one would be. I suspect, like, for example, I did really like Interceptor City. I also really liked Grotznick to Mad Dog. I think Denny Flowers, I would like to see him write some bigger characters in 40k. I think his books have been really good so far. I liked Above and Beyond, which is also an Aeronautica book. And yeah, I think he's done really good. So I'm really excited. I really hope they give Denny Flowers a big character. Jude Reed's done some books that did pretty well, so she got given Fulgrim, and that's basically how it works. If you write a book that does well, they give you a bigger character. So we'll see. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough because I'll talk more at the end, like, about which of the biggest plot lines that have come from these books, in my opinion. But I think honestly, Grotznick I enjoyed the most, I would say. Maybe that's controversial, I don't know. Archmagos, I actually did a bit of a rundown from the main Archmagos plotline on the channel the other day. If you're not familiar, this was the big time heist we were all waiting for a long time, and I really liked this. I thought this was a lot of fun. If you're completely unaware, Belisarius Cawl decided that, well, he hasn't decided. He's planned with Guilliman how to save the Imperium. And the way they're going to save the Imperium is, of course, by closing the Great Rift and allowing the light of the Emperor of Mankind to shine once again through to Imperium Nihilus. Seems pretty important. However, to do that, you need a lot of technology, and technology that is far beyond the Imperium's understanding right now. And this technology is connected around Blackstone, and in particular these Necron pylons that we knew used to exist on the planet of Cadia. So on the planet of Cadia, there were all these Necron pylons, and it turns out they were quite important before Abaddon destroyed them, because these Necron pylons on Cadia were on planets throughout the galaxy, and they created a network which kept the warp from spilling over into our reality. And after Cadia was destroyed, that was the last thing Abaddon needed to weaken that system, allowing the warp to kind of spill into our reality, which created the Great Rift, which has been a cataclysm for the Imperium of Man, and to us, the Eldar as well. But it's been awful for everybody. So yeah, Cawl and Guilliman are planning to fix this, and Cawl needed to understand more about how this Necron technology worked, and so he basically time traveled to the War in Heaven to understand how this tech works, and he was successful. He gets to the War in Heaven, and they end up meeting other Necrons who had also time traveled to this planet. It's a crazy story. It's complete tech heresy. If you're thinking this is heresy, it is complete heresy. But yeah, it works. Basically, by the end of the novel, they get it to work, and Cawl does make kind of a rudimentary pylon network which closes a warp rift. He closes the Pit of Raucus, it's called, and he closes this warp rift, and that is a huge sign of things to come. It basically tells us that should Guilliman and Belisarius Cawl at this point in time get their hands on enough Blackstone, build these pylons, charge it the right way, they can close at least a big section of the Great Rift and potentially save, this is going to save billions of lives. So this is a huge win for the Imperium of Man, a huge sign of things to come. But there is a big twist in the novel. Vashtor the Archaphane appears in so many modern 40k books, it's kind of ridiculous now. He once again appears, and here's the twist at the end of this novel, is basically that he has been planning this all along. He's the god of machines, right? The demigod of machines. And he's able to see through any machines that he likes. And so he has been planning for Belisarius Cawl to complete this work for a purpose. And what that purpose might be, who knows, but it's likely it's something to do with the Blackstone. And like I say, Guilliman and Cawl can charge the Blackstone one way and close the Great Rift. You can also charge Blackstone the other way, and I suspect Vashtor is waiting for Cawl to build all of these pylons, and then if the forces of chaos take them, then they can charge the Blackstone the other way, and that would lead to the Great Rift expanding perhaps towards Terra, perhaps something even worse. So we will see where this goes. But yeah, Cawl has kind of breezed through his plot lines almost too easily, and it's literally pointed out by his friend Friedrich in the book. Like this was all a bit too easy. Like, how come we can do all this crazy stuff? And Cawl just, he's like, I'm a genius, is what it is. But yeah, apparently Vashtor has been allowing him to be successful in this regard. So it's pretty exciting. I definitely do want to do a Vashtor deep dive because now we've got so much on him, on his forces, and yeah, it's a pretty exciting time. So yeah, that was a pretty cool book. So yeah, I can see why that did so well. I think that Archmagus Dominus, Belisarius Cawl, and Vashtor the Archithane, these are two brand new characters in Warhammer 40k. Sorry, brand new. They're like 8 years old, but they're brand new relative to the history of 40k. And of all of kind of the new things they've created, I think they have been very well received by the fan base. I know not everyone's going to like them, not everyone's going to like everything, but I think that generally speaking, Belisarius Cawl is written very, very well. Vashtor, likewise, is a really interesting, different type of demon. Like we were talking about how the demon lies to Alpha Primus potentially, but Vashtor can't lie, and he's very rational, and he is very scheming, and he can work with Chaos Space Marines because he can kind of just manipulate them into doing whatever he wants. And of course, Abaddon's relationship with Vashtor is kind of the big center plotline for the forces of chaos right now. And Abaddon may just be getting played. We'll see, but typically Abaddon comes out on top. So maybe Abaddon's on top of things, but Vashtor is a supremely intelligent being. So I would be very hesitant to do a deal with Vashtor because he won't make a deal with you if it doesn't come out in his favor. But yeah, it's pretty cool. That pretty good book. So then we've got Ashes of the Imperium, Era of Ruin. Era of Ruin, the last book of the Horus Heresy. Ashes of the Imperium, the first book of the Scouring. Era of Ruin, like again, I thought Ashes of the Imperium would win over Era of Ruin. Whilst Era of Ruin does have some great books, and like it's an anthology, so it's a book of short stories. And it does have some great books within it. Most of them are kind of things we didn't really need. I think that like it was nice seeing more on like Katsuhiro. It was nice seeing more on the White Scars, but I don't think we needed to do the Black Rage again. I think that was kind of done in the End and the Death, so that was kind of superfluous. And really the whole thing hinged on Carrion Lord of the Imperium, and Carrion Lord of the Imperium was sensational as the novels go, but realistically it was kind of carrying the whole book, to be honest with you. Even like Ahriman's story, I thought Ahriman's story would lead to something much grander than it did, and yeah, it just kind of fizzled out. But that's just all Ahriman's stories nowadays, isn't it? Really? Sorry, John French. Anyway, but then Ashes of the Imperium, complete turnaround. So Ashes of the Imperium has kicked off the Scouring with a bang. I mean, we're already. The writers are really pulling no punches. Guilliman and Dawn are going to be pretty much just below at war for a long time now. They are very much at each other's throats. Guilliman is being very manipulative. He thinks he's behind everything. He's just not sharing anything with his brothers. And it, like, given that Guilliman in 40k is this character that never really does anything wrong ever. And in fact, the Silent King is not on this list. That's a really notable one. But yeah, Guilliman in most books is this just kind of like ultimate like character. I can understand why people call him like a Mary Sue, etc., because he doesn't really get much wrong. Even when he's wrong, he's right, and like he's just always correct. And so to see this version of him in the Scouring is really, really compelling, because now we've got a Guilliman who is fucking up big time. He is making so many mistakes, and even when he's doing the right thing, he's doing it wrong. So it's just kind of, it's amazing. It's amazing to see this kind of dichotomy of Guilliman here, whereas we've got like a dichotomy where you've got, you know, the Lion and Lehman Russ are in this book, and they're like on their best form we've ever seen them. You know, this is following on from Chris Wright's other book, you know, that's technically in the Scouring, which is Lehman Russ the Great Wolf, where the Lion and Russ us are at each other's throats, literally, in that book. And now they're just like the best of friends. And you've got the Lion and Russ just going, hey guys, we're going to do whatever's the best for humanity. And you're like, who are these Primarchs and why are they so rational? What's going on here? But it's kind of amazing to see this because it's Dawn and Gilliman where the conflict is. They're definitely setting something up big for Corvus because Corvus is absent from this novel when he shouldn't be. He should be on Terra. So they've already planned Corvus' story. Vulcan, of course, is sort of, yeah, he's having a tough time with things, as you might imagine. But yeah, I mean, it's phenomenal writing for Chris Raitt to write so many of these big Primarchs into one book. It's a lot of pressure. I think he crushed it. And yeah, it's kind of amazing. Like when they do like the big meeting of the book, like pretty much like each of the main Primarchs get like a paragraph. And you know, I was rereading in the lines so many times because, you know, anything that any of them say or Constantine Valdor says, you know, could be vastly consequential. And yeah, someone asked earlier about Zaranchek Xanthus. Zaranchek Xanthus' story is definitely the most like compelling of all of them for me personally. Basilio Foe or Zaranchek Xanthus is, I mean, he's I think by the time they're done with this character's story, he is going to be up there with Erebus for just absolute bastard of the setting. He is such a bad guy. There is very little redeeming about this character. You've basically taken the worst character just completely in terms of them being like evil, and you have added in a load of chaos now, or you're going to, and that's what it looks like they're doing. So it is, yeah, that he's going to be the significant force in starting the Inquisition, and why the Inquisition is so messed up in the future. Also, the worst aspects of the Inquisition, which is things like Xanthism, Horusianism. It's just, yeah, the Inquisition. The beginning of the Inquisition is yeah, it's already starting off terribly, but it's what we love to see as 40k fans. So I am really enjoying it. So can't wait to see that. Anyway, what else? What have we not talked through yet? Yes, okay, we've got the three left: Grotznik, Remnant Blades, and the Remnant Blades, sorry, and Tomb World. So Grotznik, like I say, it might be my favorite book of last year, and I did do a little bit of a video on it. So Grotznik is a great character. So Grotznik is the Orc's answer to Fabius Bile or Belisarius Cawl, etc. He is this super genius Orc. He is so smart as an Orc that he really has a better grasp of how the warp works, how humanity works, than the best of humanity. He's incredibly intelligent to the degree that he not only created Ghazghkull, he now understands why he created Ghazghkull, how he created Ghazghkull, how the warp works to empower Ghazghkull, how Ghazghkull is really the center of this kind of Orc gestalt connected psychic consciousness that is the Orc race, and he thinks he's able to replicate it. And at the end of the book, it looks like he's going to be able to. So the book ends. I talked about this in the other stream. He's basically going to try and recreate Ghazghkull in another Orc called the Patient. And yeah, I can't wait to see how that goes, that turns out. But Ghazghkull gets to fight like another creation of Grotznik's at the end of the book. This is like an Orc Gene Stealer hybrid, which is, of course, is a massive abomination, which was just, yeah, epic to see. Orc Gene Stealer cult is one of those things that occasionally people kit bash, and it always looks epic when people do it on the tabletop. So to have that properly in the lore is just so cool. Great work from Denny Flowers there, and I think he writes Orcs really well. Orcs may be the best written faction in 40k now. They honestly might be, because it's just, yeah, they've just had banger after banger. But yeah, definitely would recommend this book. I actually much preferred it to Ghazghkull's book, and yeah, I think after the incident of the Ragnar Blackmane, I thought this was great. So I really enjoyed this novel, and I hope we hope they give Grotznik another book in the future. And like I say, it's directly set. Most of these books do lead into sequels or are hoping for sequels, but this book is really, Grotznik is planning to make a new Ghazghkull, basically, or Ghazghkull type-esque Orc, and he's able to do that because he describes Ghazghkull as the bucket of the Orcs, and as Ghazghkull gets kind of cut and injured by this Gene Stealer Orc hybrid, Grotznik is able to kind of take some of the essence that bleeds out of him, the green that fills him, and he is able to like implant that into the Patient. So we'll see if that works out, but I hope it does, because it's just very, very cool. Anyway, sorry chat, I will just go through some chats now. Oh shit, I missed some super chat. I'm sorry guys. Happy New Year, a big thank you for the amazing work last year. Oh, no, thanks so much. Just finishing up painting a night whilst watching your 40k theories. Very amazing, thanks brother. remake. Missed last stream on theories. Could Yarrick be a reincarnation of Elenia's Pyres? Happy New Year's Eve. Can't wait to see what you come out with next. Oh, I mean, I haven't watched Valrak's video yet, but I believe Valrak is already hyping up a Yarrick return, which I think the fans may have just happened by our sheer willpower. I think that we all just wanted this to happen, that it's going to happen now. So it really tells you that the people at Games Workshop, they do pay attention to what happens on like Reddit and YouTube and stuff, and so they try to stay broadly aware of what's popular with the fandom. And of course, they have the data of what sells. So it's I imagine that that's honestly the reason that that's going to happen now. So yeah, pretty exciting. In terms of him being Elenia's person reincarnated, I don't know if they'd go that far, but he is certainly, you know, a legendary figure, and he's got to come back. I think that Elenia's person is probably permanently killed because actually not necessarily. But I guess what I'm getting at is that when Horus Lupercal killed Sanguinius, I've spoken about this at quite some length before, that there seems to be this kind of Sanguinius suffering a fate worse than death. And like Sanguinius' soul kind of being shattered. And of course, the Emperor is in a really poor state in 40k to the degree that it looks like the wounds Horus inflicted upon him were not just kind of death wounds. There's something more to them. And when Elenia's person dies, it just talks about how he's kind of turned into a red mist as Horus kind of swipes his claw. So I don't see that as a way in which Elenius can come back, and kind of like with Conrad Kurz, not in like a mean way, but sort of the point of Elenius person is for him to die. And so I don't know if they would bring him back, but I'd love to be wrong about that. I mean, he is of course a legendary character. Anyway, old Baelai will never die, but you want him to come back as a dreadnought. Unfortunately, I don't think they would do that, but there are a series. I mean, they talk about it in Interceptor City again, where there is this kind of there's a lot of 40k lore on how you could be in the Imperium and live for exceedingly long times, and there's a lot of lore on all these kind of things. So it's kind of like rejuvenate treatments and this kind of technology. So it's definitely possible that he can just continue to just keep going. Eisenhorn, for example, is, you know, centuries old by the end of the series, and so, you know, he's still going most likely. And that's before we get into the nonsense of just kind of using the warp to extend your lifespan. So who knows? GW have basically soft confirmed Yarrick coming back by saying there are some old and new characters as well as some thought long dead. Interesting. Is that a quote from like a video, one of those videos that they made or something? I don't think I saw that, but I hope that's right. I don't know. I mean, some thought long dead could be anything. You know, it could be Sevatar or old Grey Knights or something like that. You know, there's a lot that you could do with that, but Yarrick would be a great one. It would be a really great one. Putting my tinfoil hat on now, I'm wondering why, after all that happened at the end of the heresy, why Jagatai Khan went to look after Horus. Is his return linked to hints of Horus's soul? I don't know if it will be connected to Horus's return. I think it's quite an interesting little passage, isn't it? Because basically it's Jagatai Khan. It's kind of bizarre because Jagatai Khan is sort of bizarrely confident in his ability to kind of detect whether or not Horus Lupercal is alive, and he seems very confident that Horus is utterly destroyed. So he's very confident in that ability, but that's not a thing Jagatai Khan ever used to have. But it's kind of all based upon this idea of Jagatai Khan did die. He saw the other side. He now has an understanding of the warp that his other brothers won't have, except maybe like Magnus. So he seems pretty confident in that. But who knows? I don't think I think Jagatai Khan's return will be something on its own. Personally, I've done a video on it before. Like, personally, I'm a big fan of Jagatai Khan being the next Primarch to return, and I think that when he does return, my guess is that he'll be connected to the Harlequins or something in that respect, because he disappeared to the Webway. But there's obviously a competing theory that he has been turned into furniture by the Drukari, but I hope that's not true. I hope that's not true. Poor Jagatai Khan. Definitely the worst fate you can possibly have. Anyway, Where were we? So we are up to Remnant Blade, and this book, I actually did really enjoy this one. Once again, this is a book where you're immediately going to compare it to other books of the faction. You know, it's a like true props to Mike Vincent for writing a Night Lords novel, because you're naturally going to compare this to the Night Lords trilogy, and you can't not. It's such a legendary series within this setting, and it's so incredibly popular. Just with everybody really, and yeah, it's not going to be as good, but it is still pretty good. So yeah, it follows the Skin Taker, and I listened to this one in audiobook, and yeah, it was pretty good. So yeah, you've got Dalkian Razik, and he is a leader of these a very small band of Night Lords known as the Remnant Blades, and they are a very small band because they have been previously betrayed by the Gore Lord Thelisicus, if I think I said that correctly. And the Gore Lord had basically previously spent them too egregiously, so that there was only a few of them left. But once again, you get this sort of like that part of the Night Lords that everybody kind of loves, where despite the fact that the Skin Taker has made a series of errors, when one of the other Night Lords forms a coup, a lot of the Night Lords sort of show their honor, their kind of twisted version of honor, and kind of stick by their lord, because yeah, like the Night Lords do have this kind of perverse sense of honor. And by the end of the book, they've kind of recruited more to the Remnant Blades, and the main plot of the book really is them trying to get their hands on one of the black ships. Which again is a big plot of Ashes of the Imperium, actually. And the black ships are the ships used to kind of transport psychers across the galaxy to the Emperor, and they want to get their hands on this technology, of course, as do others. And yeah, by the end of the book, they are able to steal the giant ship, and they do kind of like a drive-by of of the Gore Lord's flagship, and it's a pretty great story. It of course ends with this sort of suggestion that this might be the Night Lords kind of being reborn, or a new kind of center for the Night Lords faction. And yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting. You have a bunch of like side characters. You have this like really interesting kind of tech priest relationship that of course has to work with the Night Lords, and that's naturally quite horrifying. But he's a pretty cool character. So overall, I thought this book was really good. I think that if you're a Night Lords fan, I think you'll be happy with this. If you're, yeah, like I say, I have to kind of address it because it's sort of obvious thing to do, but if your thing is to compare this to the Night Lords trilogy, yeah, it's probably not as good, but it's still a decent book. I honestly really enjoyed it. And yeah, again, like seeing more on kind of minor Khorne factions is very interesting, and you get Sisters of Silence in the book, of course, because it's black ships. So it's pretty, yeah, it's a lot of fun, and hopefully we get to see more Night Lords in the future. Games Workshop just revealed a bunch new Red Corsairs novels, and the Night Lords have had two squad releases in recent years. So I think it's pretty likely the Night Lords will get some characters in the near future. Oh bloody hell! Just spilled water all over myself. Yes, I think it's pretty likely that we'll see some Night Lords in the future, and it actually wouldn't surprise me to see the Skin Taker as one of them, because at the end of the day, he's a relatively unique looking character. He kind of has he takes the weapon of the Night Lord that he kills, and he's yeah, like they need some characters to base things around, and unfortunately, I don't think we're going to see Seventar anytime soon. But hey ho, I'd love to be wrong. Maybe Decimus. Maybe yeah. To be fair, Decimus is a relatively likely one, I guess. But we will see. So yeah, overall, I kind of like that book. I can understand why it's in the position that it's in. I didn't really think it would do a whole lot better, but yeah, I was pretty happy with it, and I think that makes sense. And I read it around the same time as Tomb World, and yeah, I'd probably put them in the same order, to be honest with you. Tomb World, once again, like the Necrons, such a popular faction, so well written in recent years, that this book, you know, you're naturally going to compare it to Infinite and the Divine, the Twice Dead King series. I definitely, yeah, don't think it was as good as them, but it's honestly, it's not half bad. Like it's honestly pretty good. Like if you like Necron lore, you will like this one. So it takes place on this planet of Orimus, which is kind of like this massive warehouse world for the Imperium of Man, and people on it, it's a it's a pretty tough life. You literally can just die of radiation poisoning because they just spend their life just kind of shoveling coal in this kind of like toxic air. So it's it's a lot of fun, but of course the planet is actually a tomb world, and the Necron Lord Heckerson is out there. He's just kind of like taking credit for everyone else's work, and the what's it called? Coroner, what's he called? Oh, I've forgotten his name now. Techno. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so eventually, you've got an Arbites Marshal called Synos, and she figures out that the Necrons are awakening and calls in the Death Watch, and the Death Watch, they arrive, but this is a complete shit show. The Necrons are way too large, way too powerful. Kemet, the Necron, she's able to kill the captain, and basically just they tear through the Death Watch. It's not a good sign. And then Kamatic, the Necron, he reveals that he's been kind of manipulating things the entire time and tries to take over the planet. But Kemet, she's got that kind of Necron honor that we see the Necrons have from time to time. So she is a killer, but she has to kind of obey by the codes of the warrior that the Necrons have. And so she actually turns against Kamatef. She burns him and puts the previous Necron Lord back onto the throne, even though he is kind of this incompetent lord. And she kind of threatens him to do a better job next time, and all the humans basically die, and the Necrons take over the planet. So it's a pretty interesting little story. Once again, it's that Necron politics we all know and love, and this idea that Kemet, like, she's this incredible warrior. Cryptek was the word I was looking for. Thank you, bro. I completely forgot the word Cryptek. Yes. So Kemet, like, she is kind of like this kind of incredible warrior, and even though she could just kind of take over the planet herself if she wanted to, but her kind of like Necron honor, which they do abide by, keeps her serving the previous overlord, even though he's largely kind of incompetent. And under Kamatef, they would probably have been more prosperous, but she still kind of turns against him at the end, which is pretty interesting. And seeing a book where the humans kind of fight a losing fight is always going to be an interesting one, because who doesn't like an apocalypse type story, really? So yeah, overall it was pretty good, and I really liked it. And Jonathan D. Beer, again, one of those authors that has written some interesting books like in recent years, and he's been writing factions that maybe don't get so much attention as other, like Dominion Genesis. That was also quite an interesting one, so I hope we get to see more out of him. But overall, that's the top 10. So in terms of the list, like I say, I was kind of shocked. I was very surprised that Voidscar did as well on this list. I liked the book. I thought it was really fun, but I didn't know it would have as widespread appeal as it did. I do think that the Corsairs were one of those really interesting factions. They do have like models, and they have been in this setting for a long time, but they're not really a central Eldar faction compared to like the Craftworlders or the Drukari. I mean, really, I guess the Exodites are the main other Eldar faction that we're all wanting to see. So seeing them be placed so highly was pretty cool. And then Dropsite Massacre, I mean, that's really notable in terms of it's likely going to lead us to get more plot lines in the future based around the heresy. What is really notable to me about this list personally is the absence of the Silent King, the final book of the Dawn of Fire series. That is genuinely quite bizarre to me that didn't make it on. The Dawn of Fire series was announced to be the new Horus Heresy, the Horus Heresy of 40k, and yes, it got kind of cancelled, and yes, it is a big deal that it was cut short just to 9 books. But the Silent King is the first proper interaction of the Silent King in a 40k novel. Yes, there's the short story where he meets Dante, allegedly, but even that is allegedly, and even then, that wasn't before kind of the proper return of the Silent King and getting to see him take on a Primarch. And although they don't fight, we do get Guilliman and the Silent King face to face at the end of the novel, and that is a huge deal. And I called this stream like the biggest and best lore of 2025. And in terms of the most impactful lore of the books of the last year, yes, we have Archmagos, but the Silent King is also in that plot line. And again, it's the Silent King that starts off this plot line of Mars having a rebellion against the Imperium of Man. We've got Mars allowing the Emperor to die. That's basically confirmed now that the Emperor is going to die, and no one really knows how to stop that. Then we've got the fact that the Belisarius School is trying to close the Great Rift. And of course, the Necrons have kind of, they've not won, but they're in such a strong position compared to the Imperium of Man. At the moment, things are looking a little bit hopeless. So it is pretty... It was pretty dire it was pretty surprising to me that that book wasn't on this list and more people didn't read it. And it, like, just how I talk about how, oh yeah, well, Dropsite Massacre tells us we'll probably get more Horus Heresy books in the future. Not getting a Silent King novel on this list tells us that I think the Games Workshop is going to all but abandon mega series in 40k, and I'm a little bit sad about that, because I did like the Dawn of Fire was a chore at times. I will admit that, but it was still a series where I kind of felt like I invested in these characters that were relatively minor, Yang and Kesh, and like the fact that that was leading somewhere to them becoming important characters in the setting, that is cool. And now I don't think they're going to do that again because it didn't do well. But the truth is, the reason it didn't do well is because a lot of the books were dull, and a lot of people were just kind of bored of the Dawn of Fire series by the time you got to like book 4. So it was, yeah, fair enough, man. But like, it's sort of a little bit sad, really. And yeah, I wonder how many people are aware of kind of what's going on with Mars and the rebellion against the Imperium, because who knows what's going to happen now. And maybe there was a problem in terms of, it was, like I said, there's a split vote issue. So like that Archmagos and Silent King, anybody who read Silent King would have also read Archmagos, and maybe those votes went there, and that's why Archmagos was far higher. But I would have thought Silent King would have been above Tombworld or Remnant Blade. So yeah, very surprised to not see that on the list at all. I definitely think it was probably a better book than like Fulgrim, in my opinion, because Fulgrim is sort of a it's not the best writing for like where in Silent King you get to see this version of Gilliman where it's not kind of like a caricature, but Gilliman makes genuinely hard decisions that make you empathize with the character and understand a lot about how he is so necessary for the Imperium to function. Fulgrim is just kind of, you know, he's just the Fulgrim we all know, and maybe that's what you want as Empress Jordan fans, I don't know, but it didn't really do a lot for the character, in my opinion, whereas Silent King did. And Gilliman's relationship with not just the Necrons, but also the Custodians and the normal Imperium citizenry is so good, and it's so interesting to me. So I would have placed that way higher, but it's not even on the list, so there we go. And I guess people prefer wrong Gilliman to correct Gilliman, because Ashes of the Imperium, of course, has done very, very well. But yeah, I mean, let me know in the comments what you guys think. But yeah, in terms of the biggest plot lines of last year, I do think Grotznik building a new Gadskull is genuinely a pretty impactful plot line that we'll see again in the future. Fulgrim wanting to be the new Emperor does have potential. It could be a thing. Era of Ruin, of course, is kind of setting up a lot of what happens in the Scouring, and they really pull no punches. The Gilliman and Dawn are basically going to be at a civil war in the near future. Yeah, they probably won't fire actual weapons, but it's going to be just below that level. And then Archmagos has massive ramifications for the entire setting. You've got the closing of the Great Rift potential. You've got Vashdor's plan to, you know, take over pretty much everything. Vashdor has been planning for this for a long, long time. And in addition to that, the rebellion against Mars is very much continuing, and we've got the new Fabricator General attempting to bring Cool and others to her side so she can kind of prepare for this war against Gilliman. And then Voidsguard in and of itself has potential because of how well it's done. The fact that the Corsairs are now one of the most popular factions of last year's lore, like, that's a big deal. It tells us that Eldar books do sell. Eldar, when written well, will be bought, and I hope that they give Mike Brooks kind of more Eldar kind of central characters, because Lilith, I think, was another really good book which I reviewed before on the channel, and I hope like Asdrubal Vecht gets a new plot line, and everybody's waiting for Craftworld to get kind of their big direction now that the Inari have kind of fizzled out. But yeah, so some huge plot lines for the near future, and that's, you know, it's tough to say whether Dropsite Massacre has set up some big things, because most of the big plot lines that come out of it, things like the Elf Legion shenanigans and the problems of controlling traitor Primarchs, there was stuff we sort of already knew, but definitely it will yeah, lead to stuff in the near future, so we'll see. Anyway, comments. Hello everybody. No. I'm a believer in the ashes of the Prospero prophecy mentioned by Jarl, and who's coming back, mainly because I want the car. Me too, me too. I'd talk about that in the Khan stream. So yeah, if you're a fan of that, check out that stream. I do really like it. What are your thoughts on John French's Ahriman series? I just picked it up as my first Warhammer voting. Was Warhammer book, I'm guessing. It's not like bad. So John French is a good writer, and he does like the Ahriman is a really interesting character, and he's very compelling as a character. And he is someone that is genuinely trying to do the right thing a lot of the time. And he isn't the he is maniacal and he is evil, but he is honestly trying to do what's best for his legion most of the time, and that's actually pretty compelling as characters go. The problem with the Ahriman series is that a lot of the plot lines don't go anywhere, and they get kind of tied off in later books, and so it looks like John French is setting up big plot lines for the future, but the Thousand Sons only really have one major plot line. I guess firstly you have, you know, there is this kind of healing of Magnus which goes on, but the idea of fixing the rubric is of course the main focus of Ahriman series, and you have Ahriman doing the first rubric, which fails, the second rubric, which sort of works, but then it gets hijacked by Magnus, but then it kind of works ultimately because he does save one rubric high, and you're like, okay, so this is the future. Then that, oh, I'm spoiling it now, sorry, spoilers. Then that rubric high basically turns into like the doom of the Thousand Sons, the Pyrodemon, and then Ahriman has to wipe him from existence. So it kind of ties itself off pretty neatly, and that's sort of to be expected with a lot of 40k novels, but with Ahriman's it kind of felt a bit dull. Like I would compare it to the Twice Dead King, where the Twice Dead King is a Necron series, where at the end of those books, the rise of the Flayer King is like this fantastic prophesized event that creates a beautiful circular stream of time for the Necrons. But that plays really well into Necron lore, whereas Ahriman's, he messes with time again, and using Necron technology once again, funnily enough. But where he undoes his previous mistakes, it doesn't bring anything to the Thousand Sons lore, in my opinion. It just sort of puts them back where they were. So if you like Thousand Sons, yeah, I do think you'll enjoy it. And he is a good writer, but I wish he could have been braver, or Games Workshop would have allowed him to be braver with it, because it's a bit of a shame. I really liked the Ahriman series, though I'm extremely biased as I adore Ahriman. Fair enough. How many King in Yellow references are there going to be? To be fair, I don't think I've actually had a single King in Yellow reference today, which is not bad. I mentioned Valdor, but I didn't mention the King in Yellow, so I think we're fine. I really enjoyed the Necrons in Archmagos, so I really need to read Tomb World. I have it on my shelf, but have yet to give it a go. Yeah, I mean, like I say, if you like Necrons, you'll have a good time. The Outcast Eldar have always been the coolest Eldar. Really hoping that the Corsairs, Harlequins, and Exodites get a combined codex in 11th. Oh, interesting. So you'd prefer a combined codex? I would have thought you'd want an individual codex so that you get kind of like a full Harlequin deep dive book. Do you know what I mean? Interesting. We need concrete info for Alfarius being dead or not. Yeah, so I did a stream with Josh like a couple of weeks ago, and we spoke quite a lot about this sort of thing, and it's, yeah, I mean, I guess it's all going to hinge on the scouring, right? It would be very easy to leave the possibility of Ahriman's return open. Very easy to do that, but so far, I'm going to try and move that, not ruin the entire stream. I think that's worked. Yes, it'd be very easy to leave the possibility of Ahriman's return open, but so far, I just don't think that's on the cards. I think that they have said that they treat Alfarius and Omegon both as dead, and it was definitely Alfarius that died at the hands of Dawn. So I think it's a possibility that they could like change that, and they will leave it open because everybody loves Alpha Legion shenanigans, and of course they deliberately, even in like modern Alpha Legion books, like Sons of the Hydra, they talk directly about, oh, what if Omegon is still alive? They literally go hunting for him. So it's definitely a thing in the. It's not just like a fan theory. It's definitely a thing in the setting that people suspect Omegon might have survived. But I don't think it sort of messes with the balance of the setting if you look at it that way, I guess, is the only downside from their POV, because you have all of the traitor Primarchs, you have one of each god, and then 2 undivided. They're all demon Primarchs, and then you would just have Alfarius Omegon to the side, which is a bit weird. So it sort of messes with the balance. It's not like the strongest thing in the world, but yeah, it's a little bit weird. Do you know what I mean? Silent King wasn't able to be voted for. It must have been. It definitely came out last year. It wasn't this year or the year before. But maybe, why wouldn't it? Was it disqualified for some reason? I didn't vote in the thing. I only saw the results. I want to read it, but I didn't finish Martyr's Tomb. Fair enough. And can't sum the determination to follow the series to get to that book. Yeah, Martyr's Tomb, again, one of those novels. Yeah, it's not great. It's not a great novel. You find out at the end it's seemingly playing into this kind of there is another talk about the Star Child, and there is more hints into sort of the Hand of Abaddon plotline, but they should have been clearer about the Hand of Abaddon from the start. And yeah, it just sort of, it feels so disconnected to the rest of the series, doesn't it? It's a bit of a weird one. But yeah, that it's Martyr's Tomb, and it's Kingdom of Iron, Iron Kingdom. Marco, hey Marco. I'm on Flight of the Eisenstein in the Horus Heresy. Nice. Should I read Dropsite Massacre next, or Fulgrim? Fulgrim next. I would do Fulgrim next, and then I would do Dropsite Massacre. But it will also, yeah, I mean, that's probably a pretty way to do it. Yeah, that's fine. I guess I think actually Quipster is working at the moment on a what reading order he'd recommend. To be honest, you're never going to do it perfectly right, because, for example, you'll read about Corvus Corax on Dropsite Massacre, and then you won't go back to that until you get to First Heretic. But that's fine. It's not a problem. To be honest, the Horus Heresy is always going to be out of order a little bit in terms of the timeline, because it's not written in a cohesive timeline. So you just sort of do it all you can. Do it as well as you can. I wish there was like a button on like Kindle or something that you could press, and it would reorganize your Horus Heresy chapters into a cohesive timeline. Can you imagine how great that would be? That would actually be a good use of AI. And that would have been pretty cool. Then read First Heretic, Know No Fear, Betrayer, and that aura. All great books. Fulgrim is boring now. He is a bit dull. I think it's one of those things where, like, saying you're going to be the new emperor, it's cool. It's a fun plot line, but it's just too grand as a plot line. So it just sort of, it immediately kind of suggests it's actually just a nothing burger. It's not really going to do anything. I'd love the Eldari craft worlders to start to maybe settle down in a part of the galaxy and try to rebuild their empire. Me too. I think that's what I would do. You've got Craft World Beotan, Craft World Yanden. Historically, that's what they'd like. And I mentioned to Pancreas No Work when we did our live stream, like my theory is that I would actually use the Inari a little bit, because if you're not familiar, Craft World Yanden are largely dead. They suffered massively at the hands of the Tyranids. And so bringing in Craft World Yanden to the Inari to kind of like resurrect a load of the Yanden who were trapped in these kind of soul gems would be a great way of using the Inari in an interesting fashion, but also keeping it focused on the Craft Worlders and not expecting too much of the Inari to be involved. And therefore you'd have a reinvigorated Eldar force, and that would allow them to kind of, defend a series of maiden worlds or whatever it would be. I'm late but stoked to have you back. Amazing. Lehman is returning this year is the prediction. Lehman is returning this year. Okay. Interesting. What makes you, do you have a theory as to why it's this year? I think I'm sort of less confident Lehman would return next now, not only because of the predictions of Nyar. So in Ashes of the Imperium, someone mentioned this earlier. There's a book called Ashes of the Imperium, which is one of the Primar Primaris books that was released when Primaris came back, and the Stormseer Njal, he has a visions where he sees all of the Primarchs returning. It's Guilliman, then it's the Lion, then it's the Khan, and he doesn't see Leman Russ returning at all. That's why I don't think Leman Russ is next. I think that's been correct so far. So I think that is so I think that next will be the Khan, partly based off of that. It's not the strongest evidence in the world, but it's something, right? And in addition to that, we had a book called Wolf Time like a few years ago now, and that book didn't have Leman Russ return into it. And so it's just very weird for me. I don't think Games Workshop planned forward enough, but I don't think they'd have a book called Wolf Time and then a few years later have the actual Wolf Time. Because what would they call that book? The Wolf Time, but for real? What would they call it? It would be so strange. So I just don't think they can do that. But I'd love to be wrong. In addition to that, you did just have the entire Space Wolf range drop, and it did really well. It's a fantastic range of models. Very jealous. Well, actually, the Dark Angels are pretty good too, to be honest with you. But fantastic range of models. Even I have to admit, for Space Wolf fans. But Leman Russ wasn't accompanying them. And typically, if they'd released Leman Russ alongside them, that range would have done even better. It would have sold out the window. So not like Primarchs sell big. So not having Leman Russ come back is a bit of a shame, I guess. Sorry, it's a bit of a missed opportunity. I would have grouped it together. So we'll see. But hey ho. Hi Sam, big fan. I'm hoping for the third book of the Black Legion series, but it's been a few years already. It's like waiting for the next Game of Thrones books. Yeah. I mean, it's a I feel like it's I'm with you. I feel this is an interesting comparison, totally. But because he is also still writing for Games Workshop is the other interesting thing about that comparison. Like George R.R. Martin still cracks out like other books randomly. Like ADB wrote Carrion Lord of the Imperium, for example, and he'll probably write a scouring book here or there. But I don't think I'm worried about it yet, because I think ADB has been quite open. He had some personal issues in his life, and total respect for that. So I am really hoping we get it soon, but I think that he's been working on it for a while. I think I'd love that book to come out sooner rather than later. I hope it will be a big deal, because of course you're going to have this. You've got big plot lines. You've got Magnus the Red being bent at the hands of Iskander. You're going to have the Black Legion invading Komara. You've got some big things in that final book. So that book could be huge for the setting. And whilst it will still take place before Guilliman's return, I still think it will be setting up lots for the faction. And Aram, when Abaddon's written well, he's so good. He's such a good character and so compelling. So I can't wait for that. So I'm totally with you there, brother. What special abilities do you think the Black Sword Sigismund wielded has? Ooh, great question. So I think it's in, what's that going to be? Quipster, if you're in chat, maybe you'll remember. I want to say it's in Mortis, but it might be in Warhawk. So in that book, when Sigismund gets the Black Blade, they imply that the Emperor made it for Sigismund. Like the Emperor had foreseen what Sigismund would become, and they gave him the Black Blade. And so that's what it is. I mean, it's obviously got that classic Black Blade thing where it sort of constantly kind of hums with like the low rumble of a hymn, and it's kind of uncomfortable to look at. So I guess it's got that ability, but I'd presume an anti-witch quality. I'd presume yes, it's just got an anti-chaos, some sort of anti-chaos effect to it. Really, it's in Warhawk. Thanks, brother. Speaking of real world influences of 40k, did you know Dark Angels were to have a Native American imagery there, hence the feathers on the Deathwing? Yeah, great point. Yeah, I mean, that is a thing. Even the original Deathwing kind of story where the actual, sadly it's not around, they've removed it now, but the Deathwing banner is from that story. And there is sort of a subtle Native American sort of theme there, which is pretty badass. But I've always enjoyed my King Arthur and the Knights of the Round War Crime, so I'm a big fan. I have this conspiracy theory, that Peter Turbo is going to come back suspiciously friendly, but it's going to be cover for how monstrous he really is. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, to be fair to Peter Turbo, he's, of all of the Traitor Primarchs, he's one of the ones where he's actually done an okay job by his son's reckoning. Like, some of the Iron Warriors literally worship Perturabo in the Uriel Venture series, and like it's they think that he did such a good job. He was right to turn against the Emperor, and we're really just missing those final components that we're now getting in the Scouring of the actual reason behind his ascension to demonhood, why he decided to do that. But in terms of him being nice, I mean, there's only one proper appearance of him in 40k, which is in Half-Breed, a short story. And yeah, he's still Perturabo. He's basically just deciding whether to kill him or not the entire time. And he's fought in something like, I want to say like 10,000 wars or something. I think he says in the time since, because it was the warp, so sometimes not a problem. And we know he had a civil war against Mortarion, which I spoke about on the channel. So he should be a complete monster by the time we get to see him again, which would be cool. I mean, I'm more excited for Perturabo than Lorgar, to be honest with you. I think that like Lorgar, in a way, they don't really need to do anything with Lorgar. I think he will naturally kind of be put opposite to like the Star Child when the Star Child comes back. But really, Perturabo is such a wild card because there's so much unexplored in what he is. And yeah, in terms like that, especially like I don't think he will become like a Demon Prince of Vashdor, as a lot of people hope, and I don't necessarily hate the idea, but I don't think it will do. But it's the fact I do think that the introduction of Vashdor makes Perturabo's position more interesting, because Perturabo can't just be kind of the weaponsmith of the traitors. You know, that is now Vashdor's job. So it's even some of like Perturabo's creations are now going to be more assigned to Vashdor than himself. So we'll see. We saw a huge change in the lore with the Dark King reveal, that other retcons in the end and other retcons in the end of the death. What big plot changes do you imagine we might see in the Scouring series? Yeah, I mean, so all of the big events are so old now that I imagine they will be going through them, and like they do try to stay true in like the broad sense, but the details, things change a lot. So I still think it will be the case that Perturabo will get a big win against Rogel Dawn, but the details will change massively. So in the old lore, the Imperial Fists, I think it's like 500 Imperial Fists are the Gene Seed is sacrificed by Perturabo. That's not a big number for modern day 40k or Horus Heresy. So I think that number will have to go up a lot. I think that you will see like in terms of the last stand of the Alfarius Omegon, who knows what will change there, but they have the huge opportunity there to change things. And what else have we got? Oh yeah, the Fall of Caliban. So in terms of they've already sort of announced a little bit of a change there already. So the Lion is going to find out about the betrayal on Caliban whilst he's on Terra, and in the old lore he didn't find out until he got back to Caliban. So he is going to find, presumably from the Fallen who are at on Terra at this point in time, he's going to find out about the betrayal of Luther, but or at least something about it. And so they're already setting things up to change, and the final fight will probably play out the same way. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of details that change in it. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of really exciting things. The kind of like semi defeat of the Chaos Gods is already huge. Love to see it. You would be expecting, according to the Dreadwing book, the Chaos Gods should pull back to Caliban at this point, but now they're sulking in the quiet of the warp, as it were. So we will see. But that's it for today. Please do let me know what you guys think of the books from last year. What were your favorite novels? What do you want to see next year? And were there any surprises for you on that list? Like I said, I was a little bit surprised in the placement of some of those. I would have expected the Silent King to make an appearance. I even quite liked the Farsight book from Phil Kelly. And yeah, so I was quite surprised in the way the list came out. But overall, I can agree with the community's voting on most of these novels. So yeah, I think that was a pretty solid year for Warhammer 40k, but I think this year will probably be even bigger because we've still got more lore with the Lion to come. We're going deeper into the Scouring. It's going to be a lot of fun. So thank you so much for watching, everybody. Thank you so much for catching me live, and I will see you guys next time.